Strategy. It's the word we use for the grand plan, right? The long game, the blueprint for success.
Hmm.
But so often when we talk about organizational strategy, it just feels so
It
abstract.
really does. It's a stack of PowerPoints, maybe a dense technical document that sits on a server somewhere.
Exactly. And you have these endless meetings where no one can quite agree on what success even looks like. But what if?
Hmm.
What if the key to all of this, to designing and executing a truly successful strategy, isn't about mastering all that complexity?
What if it's about something much more fundamental?
Something deeply human, something, sensory.
Precisely. And that's what this deep dive is all about. We're exploring a fascinating and I think surprisingly accessible idea
Mm-hmm.
that organizational survival and its eventual triumph actually mirrors the basic biological process of how we interact with the world.
So we're talking about the five senses. We are. We're looking at a unique management framework that takes the five traditional senses, sight, hearing, touch, smell, and taste, and assigns them as these indispensable and crucially measurable pillars of an organization's strategy.
So this isn't just about setting high-level, sort of fuzzy objectives.
Not at all. This framework really forces you to get granular. The whole goal is to move beyond mere aspiration and establish a way to make strategy sensory, measurable, and highly actionable.
And what's remarkable is how applicable it is. I mean,
Yeah.
you could use this whether you're a brand new startup, a huge multinational corporation, or, and this is key, the organization that actually inspired this whole methodology.
Right. A non-governmental organization, an NGO, focused specifically on digital literacy for underprivileged women in Africa.
Which is such a high-pressure, resource-constrained environment to test something like this.
Absolutely. So our source material for this is a really comprehensive white paper. It not only proposes this entire five senses of organizational strategy framework, but it details how it was tested in that exact real-world environment.
So what's our plan for today?
We're going to unpack that core analogy, sense by sense. We'll explore the detailed strategy blueprint that came directly from the NGO's challenges and its successes. And then, and this is the most compelling part for me, we're going to reveal the mathematical model.
The model designed to actually quantify success.
Exactly. It uses a dynamic census score. It's this powerful blend of organizational philosophy, robust process design, and data science, all applied to the daily reality of management.
Okay, let's do it. Let's unpack how we can turn the five human senses into five strategic pillars.
Let's get into it.
So we'll start with the two senses that govern how we perceive ourselves and our immediate environment: sight and hearing. Let's begin with sight, which the source defines as organizational vision, or S1.
Right. And this is the fundamental question for any founder, any leader, really. What comes first? Is it the specific idea for a product, or is it the overarching vision for the future you want to create?
That's a classic chicken and egg problem.
It is, but according to this framework, the sequence is actually secondary. It doesn't really matter if you had a specific product idea and then built a vision around it, or if you had this monumental vision to solve a huge problem and then developed an idea to execute on it.
So what does matter?
The practical starting point is identical. The framework requires that both the idea and the vision have to exist on what the paper calls the single coin of self-belief.
The single coin of self-belief. I like that. It's a great metaphor.
It is, isn't it?
It's that moment of inspiration, that immovable conviction that, despite all the odds, you can actually pull this off.
That's the thing. That self-belief is what keeps an organization from compromising its fundamental reason for being, its mission integrity.
And this is where the framework delivers its first real insight, I think. Because vision can sound like something you just print on a motivational poster.
Right. It can feel a bit empty.
But the source uses the grit of this digital literacy NGO to highlight just how relentlessly difficult it is to maintain that vision under constant operational pressure.
And we have to remember the context here. This organization is focused on bringing essential IT training to women who face enormous systemic barriers in Africa.
So their resources are always strained. They have this incredibly clear vision. But running an organization like that means, well, it means continuous challenges.
It means a lack of consistent funds. It means a heavy reliance on the dedication of unpaid volunteers. And it means dealing with the soul-crushing burden of keeping both volunteers and recipients motivated.
It's a constant battle against donor fatigue and that temptation to just cut corners or dilute what you're offering just to survive another month.
Every single day is a test of that founding self-belief. It would be so incredibly easy for them to compromise.
How so?
Well, they could accept funding that comes with Strings attached, mission diluting caveats. They can merge with a bigger, more bureaucratic organization and lose their agility. Or they could just scale back their ambition until the vision is, well, unrecognizable.
So the core strategic takeaway for S1, for this organizational vision, is that absolute refusal to compromise on the core idea.
Even when it's painful.
Right.
Exactly. The organization has to be rigid in its central objective.
And that rigidity, that maintenance of the single coin in its pure form, is what allows the organization to see clearly where they want to go.
That vision acts as the North Star.
But, and here's the catch, if you only stare at the North Star, you're going to walk into a tree.
That's a perfect way to put it, correct. Vision, or sight, is only the starting point. It provides that internal clarity. But that vision has to be instantly balanced with external awareness.
Which brings us to hearing. S2, which is defined as the go-to-market engagement model. Now, we all know listening is important, but why is this active listening component so critical that it's a core pillar of strategic sustainability?
Well, you see it in every industry today, right? From tech to manufacturing. Success relies on networking and working within an ecosystem.
General platform models thrive on this. They listen to and empower the partners who build on top of them.
And that reliance requires active, bidirectional listening. It's not just broadcasting your message. It necessitates this constant feedback loop, constant alignment. And the framework argues this isn't just a nice to have, it's an essential risk management tool.
Okay, so active listening improves not just personal relationships, but organizational ones. And the goal of hearing is to define an engagement model that's, what did the source say?
Scalable, repeatable, and inherently motivational. That last part is key. It ensures the entire ecosystem is invested.
Okay, as the learner here, I have to challenge that a little bit because organizations always claim they listen. They run surveys, they have suggestion boxes.
Right.
So what specific mechanism in this framework forces an organization to treat listening, both internal and external, as strategically vital, not just a box-ticking exercise? What exactly do they need to be hearing?
That's a crucial distinction. And the white paper details 4 critical segmented areas of listening and the strategic value you get from each one.
Okay, let's break those 4 down.
So first, they have to listen deeply to macroeconomic indicators and sectoral needs. For the NGO, this isn't just about general economic trends.
It's about the local job market.
Precisely. It's about anticipating shifts. Are companies in the region suddenly demanding, say, specific cloud computing skills? Or is the focus shifting to basic data entry for remote international work?
And listening to that signal allows them to design IT courses that are actually relevant.
Highly relevant to current real-world employment needs. It ensures their graduates are highly employable. If they miss that signal, their training becomes obsolete almost overnight.
That makes the training a strategic lever, not just a charitable act. Okay, what's the second area of listening?
Second is listening to corporations and sponsors. And this goes way beyond just, receiving funds. It's listening for their strategic direction, their CSR goals, their actual skill shortages.
So you can tailor your offering to them.
Exactly. This deep listening lets the NGO tailor its content, its events, its reporting metrics to add true, measurable value back to those funding organizations.
Which changes the whole relationship. It's not a donation anymore.
It becomes a symbiotic partnership, and that makes the funding sustainable, which, for an NGO, is the key to survival.
And the third, other institutions I see here.
Right. Listening to other institutions like bigger, better-funded NGOs, international aid bodies, or local government agencies, this helps them benchmark their own operations.
And it helps them shape their own evolving vision.
And it prevents them from working in a silo. Are others facing similar operational bottlenecks? Is there an overlap in services we could eliminate through partnership? It's strategic environmental scanning.
Okay, so we've covered the outside world. And the fourth area, this is the one that really drives home the point about strategy being holistic, actively listening to internal employees and volunteers.
Absolutely. The source makes a really profound strategic comparison here. It says, just like vision and idea are the two sides of the same coin.
Customers and employees are too.
Exactly. They are equally critical for success. So many organizations prioritize the Net Promoter Score, the NPS, from customers, but they completely neglect the internal voice.
And for a volunteer-driven organization, I have to assume this internal listening is even more vital. Their commitment is discretionary, after all.
It's the difference between surviving and thriving. The framework argues you have to build communication channels that are accessible and non-punitive. You have to ensure that feedback flows bottom up and laterally.
So the organization must hear not just what the workforce needs to execute the mission.
But what truly motivates them. This is what ensures that the engagement model, the cornerstone of S2, is scalable, repeatable, and intrinsically motivational by its very nature.
So to recap, S1, cite, establishes your immutable destination, your core belief.
Yeah.
S2, hearing, helps you understand the landscape, the traffic, the customers, your sponsors, and your own team.
Mm-hmm.
So once you see where you want to go and you've listened to the environment, you have to actually build the vehicle.
You do.
The next step is making that strategy concrete, tangible, something you can literally interact with.
And that brings us to touch.
We move into the third sense, touch, or S3. This is represented by the strategy blueprint. And this feels like the transition point, where the abstract concepts we've talked about transform into an actionable, structured plan.
It has to. It needs to be something the workforce, the partners, and the customers can truly feel and breathe, as the source puts it. It has to feel real, executable, and robust.
Because a strategy without a blueprint
is just expensive poetry.
Exactly. If you can't make it tangible, you can't measure it, and you certainly can't staff it.
The framework uses a really simple but effective analogy here to explain the balance needed between action and vision, the driving analogy.
It does. It's a great way to visualize it.
Okay, let's go deeper into this analogy to make sure we really grasp the mechanics. If sight is the destination, the vision, what are the other parts? Where does touch fit in? Okay, so the vision is the destination. That's the why. The ACT of driving itself for the NGO, that's executing specific teaching events, securing new sponsorship contracts, delivering the actual IT training projects, that's the action.
Right.
And the strategy, the blueprint, that's the engine of the car.
That's engine. I like that.
It's the complex, highly engineered system that converts fuel, which is your resources, into momentum, which is your progress. All three, vision, action, and strategy, have to work in perfect sync for the experience of progress to even be possible.
So the strategy blueprint, our sense of touch, is the tangible engineering specification for that engine. It's the engine in the owner's manual.
That's a great way to put it. And the very first component in designing that engine is defining the mission.
Okay, so how do we draw that sharp strategic line between mission and vision in this framework? They can often get conflated.
They can. Vision is knowing with absolute certainty the destination before you start the journey. So if the vision is to drive from Cairo to Cape Town,
the mission is the high-level navigation plan.
Exactly. It's the elevated map. It's knowing you'll travel through the Rift Valley, prioritizing highways, securing your visa points in advance. The mission is the critical first step in making that vision real. It's the highest expression of the how.
So it sounds like the vision is inspirational and immutable, but the mission is strategic, and it's subject to adjustment based on what you're hearing from the environment.
Precisely. The mission has to be a clear blend of action and strategy. It has to clearly state what core activities you're committing to and how those activities tie into the bigger long-term picture.
Okay, so once we have the map, the mission, we need the specifics of the road and the preparedness of our vehicle. That brings us to the strategy drivers.
Right, and this is where, as you said earlier, the rubber meets the road. This is where strategy translates into daily work.
These drivers are the clear, actionable items that come directly from the mission.
And the framework stresses that strategy is all about skills and preparedness. You can't control external factors, a sudden economic downturn, a competitor's price war, new government regulations.
The metaphorical traffic or extreme weather in our driving analogy.
Exactly. You can't control those things, but you can prepare for them. And the strategy drivers are the building blocks for preparing your organization's workforce.
So how does the NGO use these drivers to actually structure itself?
They form the foundation for all of their operational structures. They define the precise work streams like curriculum development versus volunteer recruitment versus sponsor relations. They define the organizational divisions, the marketing plans, the implementation schedules.
And crucially, they dictate the learning and training plans.
Yes, and this is where the strategic insight of the NGO model really shines. It's not just generic training.
Right.
For them, a strategy driver might be something like ensure remote learning capability. Now, that doesn't just mean buying a bunch of laptops.
No, it means investing heavily in training both volunteers and recipients on specific tools for, say, asynchronous collaboration or low bandwidth communication.
You're investing in skill development so that your distributed workforce becomes these highly capable drivers, totally prepared for the unique external challenges of their operating environment. That allocation of training resources is the tangible strategy.
So these drivers move the organization from high-level intentions all the way down to the most granular level, the quarterly task list.
Yes, they are converted directly into the business plan, which has to be detailed in manageable chunks: 5-year outlooks, annual goals, quarterly sprints.
And performance against those plans is then tracked with specific, measurable KPIs.
Which we will get into in detail in Section 4. That is the quantifiable evidence of touch.
Now, before we move on from touch, there's one more layer. The deeper philosophical grounding that underpins this entire engine. Even with a perfect blueprint and great drivers, every organization needs an organizational strategic philosophy.
This is the deeper why. It's what ties the emotional, the sight, to the operational, the touch. Just like a person is guided by core values, every organization needs a philosophy that gives it purpose.
It helps them answer that existential question. Why do we exist in this specific form?
Exactly. And for the NGO, their core philosophy was famously distilled into 3 simple points: digital literacy for women, volunteer engagement, and grow by alliances.
And these 3 principles aren't just mission statements you hang on a wall. They actually dictate budgetary and leadership focus.
Absolutely. They are the rigid boundary conditions for all decision-making. If a proposed project doesn't significantly advance one of those 3 pillars, it gets deprioritized. It's that simple.
And this ties directly into established theories of motivation. I'm thinking of self-determination theory, which stresses autonomy, competence, and relatedness.
That's a perfect connection to make. Digital literacy builds competence, alliances build relatedness, that network, and strong volunteer engagement feeds autonomy and a sense of purpose.
So by focusing leadership's attention on maintaining these 3 philosophical pillars, the organization ensures that the experience of working there is intrinsically motivating.
Exactly. And the success of adhering to this core purpose is often measured using broader tools like a balanced scorecard, looking at things like internal processes and learning perspectives. When you've done that, you've made the strategy truly tangible. You can touch it.
And once that engine is built and it's functional, you need to project its capability. You need to make sure that people, both inside and outside the organization, sense its presence, its capabilities, and its unique appeal.
Which brings us to the outward-facing senses.
We've established the internal core sight and hearing and the tangible structure touch. Now we project outward with smell and taste. Smell, S4, is defined as brand perception via organizational communication. I find this metaphor so effective because it's the aroma of the strategy. It's the expectations stakeholders have before they consume the full strategy, which is the taste.
Smell is purely about setting expectations and building brand equity. It's how the market is anticipating your offering. A leader's job is to excite all stakeholders, external ones like customers and partners, and internal ones like employees, with the right aroma.
It's like the tantalizing scent of a delicious dish that precedes the actual tasting.
Exactly. That's the perfect analogy. Strategic communication provides the signal of the value that's about to come. If that aroma is weak or inconsistent, nobody's even going to sit down at the table.
And once again, organizational communication, much like the other concepts we've discussed, has 2 critical intertwined sides.
It does. Internal and external. Internal communication has to ensure strategic alignment and motivation. That's everything from top-down directives to bottom-up feedback loops and cross-functional channels.
And external covers everything designed to engage the market: PR, advertising, social media, sales content.
But the framework emphasizes that effective communication, at its core, is fundamentally about storytelling.
And storytelling has 2 parts, right?
Right.
How good the core message is, the content, and how well that story was distributed and engaged with, the engagement.
Which means effective communication is defined as engaging with good content. And this is where, honestly, we have to be critical of how most organizations operate.
How so?
The source uses these powerful analogies to highlight the distinction. Think about the basic plot of star-crossed lovers ending tragically. That plot is repeated in countless works of fiction, but
There's only one Romeo and Juliet.
there's only one Romeo and Juliet. Or think about the simple premise of a portrait of a lady smiling. Millions exist, but none are more special than the Mona Lisa.
The genius is in the telling. The delivery, the nuance, the emotional resonance, not just the facts.
Precisely. So if we take that insight and translate it back to strategy, what are the critical takeaways? Because this is where most corporations fail. They just focus on volume over quality.
Okay, so what are the 3 big ones?
First, because stakeholders consume information in so many different ways, some prefer video, others text, others live interactions, Organizations need to design a comprehensive omni-channel engagement. It has to be a seamless 360-degree experience.
Second, and this is the big one, the organization has to ruthlessly focus on quality over volume of communication.
Yes, bombarding people with generic, average content. It just dilutes the aroma. It leads to stakeholder fatigue and, eventually, mistrust.
And the third takeaway, which links directly back to S3, the strategy blueprint.
Every single piece of communication across every single channel should strive to achieve one singular, clear, core message. It has to be memorable and fully aligned with the strategy blueprint.
So if your strategy is about agility, your communication has to feel agile.
Exactly. If your strategy is about premium quality, your messaging has to project scarcity and excellence. Any inconsistency breaks the aroma.
Now, getting that seamless, consistent story across all those channels, from a regulatory filing to a volunteer meetup, that requires some serious integrated infrastructure.
It does. The source calls for integrated communication systems to manage the flow of this strategic aroma. This is the mechanical heart of the organization's projection capability.
What does that look like in practice?
You need a centralized, well-connected content, data, and information management system. This system acts literally as the heart, pumping verified, aligned information and strategic energy throughout the whole organization, and getting rid of outdated or misaligned information.
So it's a single source of truth for all external claims, all internal metrics, all strategy documentation.
And it ensures that the organization's storytellers, which in this framework includes every single employee and volunteer, are connected in real time. This eliminates that risk of a volunteer in the field unintentionally contradicting a press release from headquarters.
And that seamless connection ensures the aroma is consistent and high quality. It makes the strategic narrative repeatable and scalable.
Yes, and the NGO had a fantastic execution example of this. Their Each One Get One volunteer program.
Ah, right.
That program was just genius because it made communication a strategic action. It was designed to leverage peer-to-peer engagement to communicate the organization's values and purpose. The communication wasn't just about the values, the activity was the value.
Which made the storytelling scalable and repeatable. Every time a new volunteer was recruited, the core purpose was reinforced, not diluted.
Exactly. So once the aroma, the smell, has built the right expectation and brand equity, the organization has to deliver. It has to provide the definitive experience that validates that perception.
It has to deliver the taste. S5, competitive differentiation.
Mm-hmm.
This is what separates the strategically successful from the merely functional.
This is the signature dish analogy. It's the final piece of the sensory puzzle. Success relies equally on the perfection of the recipe and the skill of the chef. Organizations have to build their own recipe.
One that's repeatable, scalable, and fully synchronized with the strategy blueprint they defined back in the touch section.
The differentiation has to be experiential.
I have to push back a little here. Isn't this just another way of saying unique selling proposition? How does framing it as taste actually add strategic value beyond what traditional business literature already tells us?
That's a fair question. It adds value because it forces leadership to think about the experience as a composite of all five senses, rather than just a feature list on a slide. A USP is something you tell people. Taste is something they feel and remember.
So taste requires every part of the organization to contribute to that unique experience.
Yes. For the NGO, their challenge wasn't just teaching digital literacy. It was creating a learning environment that was fundamentally different from, say, a sterile, boring classroom setting.
So what was their signature recipe? What was their core strategic differentiation?
After a lot of deep design thinking based on their vision, their culture, and their engagement model, their recipe was distilled into 3 core ingredients, and these had to be ensured in every single activity, from a big event to a one-on-one virtual mentoring session.
Okay, what are they?
First, ensuring the right blend of learning for necessary skill sets and knowledge growth. That's the competency pillar.
Makes sense.
Second, facilitating the building of a network and meaningful relationships. This addresses the social capital need that their target audience often lacked.
And the third ingredient, which sounds highly culture-specific, was that every interaction must ensure everyone has fun, retaining that vibrant, friendly organizational spirit.
That is the differentiation. That third ingredient, having fun, is what makes the experience memorable and repeatable. It's what ensures high volunteer retention and high student engagement.
Most organizations are just focused on efficiency and outcomes.
But this NGO strategically prioritized joy and connection. And that specific taste is the strategic differentiator that makes their story legendary and the experience meaningful for everyone involved. It's what drives their long-term success.
So we've defined the 5 concepts: sight, hearing, touch, smell, and taste. We have the philosophy, we have the execution blueprint. Now we confront the challenge of measurement and accountability.
Right.
How do we put a number on the strategic health of the organization?
This is where we move from the philosophical to the mathematical.
And this is where it gets really interesting. It's a concept that's guided great thinkers for centuries. The idea that it's extremely difficult to manage or improve something if you can't first quantify it.
That philosophy was championed by management giants like Peter Drucker and applied rigorously in science for, well, forever. If strategy remains just a qualitative ambition, it risks becoming irrelevant bureaucracy.
So the power of this framework is establishing a mathematical model, the senses score.
Exactly, to measure execution effectiveness and alignment. And the very first step is mapping the 5 senses, these experiential qualities, to concrete, quantitative, key performance indicators, or KPIs.
Okay, let's run through the mapping of the variables and let's define the metrics as we go, assuming our listener is a strategic generalist, not necessarily a finance or marketing specialist.
Great idea. So to measure sight, organizational vision, S1, the model uses the KPI-R, return on capital employed, ROCE.
OC, okay, what is that?
ROCE, or return on capital employed, is a pure financial metric. It basically measures how much money you make relative to the total capital invested in the business. It's a fundamental assessment of how effectively the organization is using its assets to achieve its core vision.
Got it. What about hearing? Engagement model, S2.
For that, we use N, Net Promoter Score, NPS. NPS is that index that gauges the willingness of customers, partners, and critically, for this model employees to recommend the organization.
So it directly reflects how well the organization has been listening, responding, and engaging with its whole ecosystem.
Exactly. Then for touch, strategy blueprint, S3, the KPI is C, customer lifetime value, CLV.
CLV. That's the total projected revenue a customer will generate over their entire relationship with you.
Right. It proves the success of your actionable strategy in fostering lasting, profitable relationships. It shows the long-term impact of that blueprint.
Next, smell, brand perception, S4, is measured by B, brand equity.
Brand equity captures the measurable commercial value that you get from a recognizable brand name compared to an identical generic alternative. It quantifies the strength of your aroma and the premium the market places on your reputation.
And finally, taste, competitive differentiation, S5, is measured by G, growth and market share.
And that one's pretty direct. It indicates how effectively your organization's signature differentiation is allowing it to capture a larger portion of the market. It validates that your signature recipe is truly better than the competition's.
Yep. Okay, so we have our 5 strategic areas, S1 through S5, and their corresponding measurable metrics, R, N, C, B, and G. Now let's look at the formula itself.
The core formula for the census score, which we'll call S, is the summation of the weighted scores. It looks like this. C dollies util sum S1R brung plus S2N plus S3C plus S4B plus S5G.
And I see the little prime symbol on the variables, R, N, and so on. That means they're the normalized values of the KPIs.
Yes. And that normalization step is perhaps the most crucial quantitative step in the whole model.
Why is that so necessary? Why can't we just use the raw numbers?
Because the raw numbers are measured on fundamentally different scales. ROCE might be a percentage from 0 to 100. NPS is an index score, often from negative 100 to positive 100. Brand equity could be a monetary value, maybe millions of dollars.
Ah, I see. If you just multiply the raw numbers, the variable with the biggest absolute number, like a huge CLV figure, would totally skew the entire score.
It would render the organizational weights, the S1 to S5, completely meaningless. You need to create a level playing field.
So how does the normalization work?
The approach used here ensures every KPI's effective score ranges precisely between 0 and 1. The simplest and most relevant formula for that is normalized score, actual value, minimum value, maximum minimum value.
And by applying that, the final census score, S, will naturally come out as a percentage between 0% and 100%.
Exactly. And the weights, the S1 through S5, are the organizational priorities. And they must always sum up to 100%.
This is the moment where the art of strategy really determines the science of the measurement.
It is. Initially, an organization can take the simplest path. Just give an equal distribution, 20% for each sense. But the framework stresses that strategic insight is lost in averages. The refinement process determining those weights is where the true strategy happens.
So it's a mix of domain knowledge and data analysis.
Absolutely. Let's talk about the art first.
Right.
How does an organization use its domain knowledge to assign those weights strategically?
Right.
It's a careful, leadership-driven deliberation. It's based on the organization's current maturity, its industry, the competitive landscape. For
Right.
example, if you're a dominant market leader, you might reduce the weight on paste, S5, because you already have differentiation.
And instead, you'd put heavy weight on S1, cite, so ROCE, and S3, touch, which is CLV, prioritizing financial efficiency and deepening the relationships you already have.
Exactly. Conversely, if you're the NGO, which relies so heavily on public profile and volunteer recruitment, what would you prioritize?
You'd probably put a massive focus on smell, S4 brand equity, and hearing, S2 NPS. Your primary focus is increasing awareness and building a committed, engaged ecosystem.
And if an organization is fighting against copycats, as the white paper notes, they might temporarily give S5, taste and growth, the highest weighting, forcing the entire organization to prioritize market penetration and clear differentiation above everything else.
Okay, that's the art. And then there's the science side for organizations that are just swimming in data and want to refine these weights based on measurable relationships.
For them, you move beyond simple deliberation. You can leverage advanced techniques to determine which of the senses are currently driving the overall organizational performance.
So you're talking about data modeling, like a logistics regression model.
Right. To analyze how changes in the independent variables, the 5 normalized KPI scores, predict changes in the dependent variable, which might be overall revenue growth or mission impact.
And the benefit of regression analysis here is that it scientifically reveals the optimal weights.
It identifies the causal relationship. It will tell you, for instance, that currently a 1% improvement in your brand equity, your smell, results in a 1.5% increase in organizational revenue, while a 1% improvement in ROCE, your cite, only yields a 0.2% increase.
So that insight guides your strategic investment. It ensures you put the heaviest weight on the factors that offer the highest measurable return. It shifts the strategy from guesswork to data-driven orchestration.
It moves the model from being a simple snapshot to a dynamic strategic tool.
But to really ground this for our listener, let's run through the exact walkthrough example from the source material. We need to see how a score is calculated and, more importantly, how it's interpreted.
Absolutely. Let's assume the organization has determined the following raw KPI values based on their current performance tracking. Their return on capital employed, R, is 75.
Their net promoter score, N, is 63.
Customer lifetime value, C, is 81.
Brand equity, B, is 52.
And growth in market share, G, is 31.
Okay, so in this specific example, the highest performing KPI is 81, and the lowest is 31. So we use those two values, max 81 and min 31, to normalize everything. The denominator in our normalization formula is always the range, 81 minus 31, which is 50.
Right, so let's look at the normalized scores, the prime variables, which show performance relative to the maximum possible score of 1. R prime for ROCE is 75, 31, 50. That calculation gives us 0.88, a very strong performance.
Okay, N prime for NPS is 63, 31, 50. That yields 0.64. Good, but showing some room for improvement in engagement.
C prime for CLV is 81, 31, 50. That's 50 divided by 50, so a perfect one. The organization is excelling at customer lifetime value.
B prime for brand equity is 52, 31, 50. That comes out to 0.42. So the aroma is weak, brand perception is clearly an issue.
And finally, G prime for growth is 31, 31, 50, which results in 0. Differentiation is non-existent relative to the organization's own performance range.
So we have the normalized performance values from 0 to 1. The final step is applying the organizational weights. And in this example, leadership has decided to focus heavily on brand and vision this cycle.
And least on differentiation, maybe because they were focused on internal structuring. So the example weights are S1, cite, gets 25%.
S2, hearing, gets 20%.
S3, touch, gets 15%.
S4, smell, gets the biggest chunk at 30%.
And S5, taste, gets just 10%.
Summing up to 100%. Okay, so the final calculation for the census score, S is the weighted average. Let's tally the weighted contribution of each sense.
Okay. Sight contributes 25% of 0.88, which is 22.0 points.
Hearing contributes 20% of 0.00, which is 12.8 points.
Touch contributes 15% of its perfect score of 1.00, so 15.6 points.
Smell, which was the strategic priority, contributes 30% of its weak 0.42 score, which is only 12.6 points.
And taste, the lowest priority, contributes 10% of its 0 score, so it contributes 0 points.
Adding those weighted values together, 22.0 plus 12.8 plus 15.0 plus 12.6 plus 0 gives us a total census score of 62.4.
And that score, 62.4 out of 100, immediately gives the leadership a measurable, actionable snapshot. It tells them two critical things.
What are they?
First, that their plan execution, which is touch, and their efficiency site are strong. But second, that their massive strategic prioritization of brand, smell, with its 30% weight, is being severely undercut by poor performance.
And that the differentiation taste is failing entirely. It contributed 0 points to their overall strategic health.
Exactly. The conversation in the boardroom immediately shifts from a vague, are we doing well overall, to a very specific, why did our 30% strategic investment in brand only return 12.6 weighted points?
It forces strategic course correction guided by actual data.
This framework really does provide a coherent way for any organization to orchestrate that symphony of management, linking high-level purpose to tangible results.
By defining strategy through the 5 human senses, it serves as this practical, comprehensive model for design, execution, and measurement.
It offers the kind of holistic insight that's sought by established methodologies like the balanced scorecard, but it does it with a highly intuitive, experience-based structure.
It's a phenomenal way to take these abstract concepts and turn them into clear, filterable data points. It allows for meaningful, non-emotional conversations about organizational health.
You're forced to ask the right questions.
Are we seeing clearly? Are we listening effectively? Is our plan tangible? Is our projection, our aroma appealing? And are we genuinely differentiated in our taste?
And that's the real shift. This framework treats organizational management and strategy as an experience to be felt and lived, not just mastered in a boardroom. That census score tells you exactly where you stand.
But it also provides immediate strategic focus for the next cycle.
It does. Looking at that example score of 62.4, you see two clear problems. Smell, the brand, is underperforming relative to its priority. And taste, differentiation, and growth contributed 0 to the weighted score.
Meaning they invested strategic focus, a 10% weight, into an area, taste, that completely failed in performance, with a 0 normalized score. That investment yielded literally nothing.
And this raises the final critical question for you, the learner, to consider when applying this framework to your own organization.
Okay.
If you could only invest significant new resources, capital, time, focus in, improving one of the 5 senses for the next quarter, which of the 5 would yield the highest proportional return in the following period?
And you can't just blindly pick the lowest score, which was taste, or the one with the lowest normalized score, which was smell. You have to consider the interplay and the correlation between the senses.
Exactly. If you invest heavily in improving your engagement model, your hearing, will that automatically lift your brand perception, your smell? And how would you prove mathematically, using either correlation coefficients or a regression model, that your strategic choice of investment offers the highest probability of increasing the overall census score above that 62.4 mark?
That is the essence of true strategic agility.